I just finished recording for something that's really, really awesome and really a lot of fun. And I just had a couple of thoughts. Oftentimes, and I just did a Juanita Speaks on leadership and what it means to be a real leader. And something that I didn't talk about in that video, or didn't really flesh out in that video, was when you are submitted under a leader, meaning you're a part of an organization or a group, and there's someone that's leading that group. It is better for you to leave than to attempt to stage a coup. And, as leaders, we always have to be open to feedback. We need to be open to the opinions of other people. But when you have someone who's an effective leader, who's in that position, who's doing the job, who's doing well, the proof is in the output, not in what they say they want to do, but what they want to do. And you haven't done what you're supposed to do. What I've noticed is there's a lot of deflection sometimes when it comes to accountability of what it is that you're supposed to do, because really good followers make excellent leaders. Your leaders expect to lead leaders, because we're all leaders. Whether you're in a position of leadership right now, whether you're in a position of being under someone who's a leader or following someone who's a leader, everyone is a leader. You're leading yourself. Part of leading yourself is the ability to follow. I've sat on many boards, many organizations, served in many companies where I was not necessarily always managing people. Sometimes I was, sometimes I wasn't. But in managing myself and leading myself, that's a part of leadership. I made it easier on my leaders by leading myself, because leaders want to lead other leaders. What I am observing and seeing is that the people who come up short in leading themselves, come up short in doing what is asked of you and not necessarily what you want to do, whether it's through feeling I can do this better, or I don't like something about that particular leader. It would be better for you to leave than to try to stage a coup, because that never works. People are in leadership for a reason. One thing I know that I am is an effective supporter. I'm an effective follower. I'm an effective supporter and team player, because I know what it's like to lead. And the things that you see that person has to deal with, probably a tenth of what they actually have to do in terms of heavy lifting in the position that they're in. And when you try to come in with your limited knowledge and limited abilities, and you're not even doing what it is that you need to do, you're not doing your job well, and then you try to deflect and make your inability to do and perform your job that other person's fault. Now, mind you, like I said in my other thing, you do have bad leadership, but you also have great leadership and horrible followers, great leadership and horrible supporters, and people who are always, one thing about being a leader, you put yourself in the crosshairs. So people are going to be hypercritical, they'll criticize everything that you do. Have the inability to look at yourself and what it is that you're not doing. I had an experience one time where I was on this fundraising group, and the leader of the fundraising group gave campaigns, they gave materials, they gave everything that we needed to be successful. And half of the people on the committee didn't read them. They didn't come to the meetings. When they did come to the meetings, they would go and leave and have all these sidebar conversations, criticizing the leadership because they didn't feel empowered to do what they needed to do. When in actuality, they were not leaders. They weren't taking the initiative. It's like people want you to be spoon-fed everything, when other leaders expect to lead leaders. Nobody has to hold your hand and tell you, okay, I want you to do your job today. Because someone doesn't hold your hand, that doesn't mean that they're not empowering you. That means that you lack the ability to have the initiative that you need to take, and the capability and skill set that you need to take instruction and go forth and launch. Because no one owes you a hand-holding session. When you are expected to be a leader that's being led by a leader, and you're expected to perform, the responsibility of performance is on you. And what I found is that the people that do the least have the least product and performance to show for it are the ones that have the most to say, the most chatter, the highest level of criticism, and more importantly, the highest level of excuses as to why they couldn't do what they were supposed to do, what they needed to do. Is everybody else's fault but their own. They want to be critical of everybody but themselves. Sometimes your failure in a particular area, you need to own that. You need to own that. And when someone says, you know what, we're going to move in another direction, or it's time to do this, or it's time to move, you need to take a real good, truthful inventory of what it is that you did or did not do with the opportunity that you had. And no one, not even your leader, owes you a hand-holding expedition when you are at a certain level and are entrusted to lead. And even your leadership, they should be able to lead leaders. So before you are hypercritical of whatever leader that you are following, make sure that you do an evaluation of yourself. What kind of follower are you? What kind of supporter are you? Are you the person that after the meeting, they sit around and chatter about everything that's going wrong, whether it is intended to be helpful or whether it's unsubstantiated peanut gallery critique? Because honestly, feedback is always welcome. But if you're saying something about somebody, especially a leader, that you cannot articulate to them or haven't articulated to them, and it has to do with your own failure, evaluate where that's really coming from. Because I think as human beings, we have a real knee-jerk tendency to make excuses for all of our shortcomings. It's everybody's fault but our own. Are you a leader that can be led? Are you leading yourself? Are you taking the time to be as critical as you are of someone else? Because all critique, all judgment, it's really a judgment on yourself. It's one thing for feedback, but feedback is verbalized. Talking about somebody behind their back, plotting, trying to stage a coup, one, is never going to work. And two, that's not real, actual feedback. That's not helpful. But if you're making excuses for your own failure and trying to put that off on, oh, I have a bad leader, are you a bad follower? Honestly, are there other areas in your life that you might not necessarily be performing in and you're making excuses in that area as well? Lead yourself first. Be a good supporter and a good follower. They always make the best leaders. That's it. It's Juanita Speaks. Hope you listen.